A big welcome to the Nick Elston Show, hosted by inspirational speaker and transformational speaking coach Nick Elston. This show brings you the people who inspire, motivate, educate, and engage in all walks of life, sharing their insights and experiences honestly, unfiltered, and off script. So, without further ado, let's get stuck into today's show.
Hey everyone, a big welcome back to the Nick Elston Show. And this week, look, I'll be honest, you know I'm a big fan of kind of disarming truth. I tell people exactly how I'm feeling right now. I'm not 100% if I'm honest. All 6'4" and 20 odd stone and me got knocked bandied by COVID last week in a supposedly weaker variant, and being triple jabbed had no effect whatsoever. It probably did. But anyway, I'm back in action now. The voice has taken a bit of a pounding, so I'm not trying to be like husky or deep and meaningful or like kind of a weird kind of chat line, I promise. It's just the way I sound right now. So luckily, I've got somebody on to save me today. I have a wonderful guest in the shape of Amy Maidment. Big round of applause for Amy. Woo! Hey.
Morning, Nick. Thank you so much for having me. And I actually think the voice is quite sexy right now, so maybe it's something you want to keep.
I'll definitely take that in mind. I'll put that in the feedback suggestion. You actually made me blush on a Monday morning. That's quite a hard task, to be honest, and well done you. I'll take that. I'll take that. So our paths crossed, first of all, when I did a webinar for you guys at Principality, obviously, which is where you work. We were chatting a lot beforehand to line up the session, and we just kept in touch ever since. And it's been amazing to have you as part of my world, and excited to have you on the show today. Now consider you a good friend and somebody that I can really talk to. And Amy Maidment, tell us who you are and what you do.
So good morning. Thanks, Nick. I'm really privileged to be part of this. I know you've had some diverse and really interesting people on the podcast. So thank you so much for having me. And especially as you've not been well, then I really appreciate this time. But as you've said, I'm Amy Maidment. I'm a senior people advisor at Principality Building Society. And I've been a people manager probably for about 20 plus years within financial services. So moved away from the operation into a HR role, which I absolutely love. And I feel that rather than just working with one team and helping one team, I can really help the whole organization now. So hopefully adding value there.
Absolutely. And I mean, that question I asked on the webinar is really valid, and something I want to ask you personally now is who looks after the people that looks after people? Because I know that, especially in your industry, your sector, in that sense, that the people managers, the people that look after people, very easy to give and give and give and take the burden of everything else. But who looks after you, kind of thing? How difficult have you found that over the past couple of years?
So I've worked in both parts of it. So as I said, I've been a people manager and now I work in our HR function. And certainly speaking from a HR perspective, I think that as a team and HR teams across the globe probably experience exactly the same, in that they do give to the rest of the business, and they do spend a lot of time making sure that everybody else is okay. And I think sometimes we might find periods where it's slightly more challenging for us individually and personally if we've got our own struggles going on as well. But one thing I will say is that the team that I work in is incredibly supportive. So, we could be just on a team meeting like this, and someone will pick up on if somebody's a little bit more quiet or hasn't maybe responded in a way that's more them, and straight away they'll check in with them. And I work with some fantastic colleagues that even when I won't admit to other people that I may be not having a great day, they will pick up on it and contact me, and we'll talk about it. And then, it makes such a difference knowing that connection is there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I find that a lot of people that get into people-centric roles have a real passion, and that certainly comes across not just from our interactions, but the way I see you interact with your colleagues, the way I see you kind of interact even on through LinkedIn and things. You do have a passion about supporting people, and that really stands out. It's not just a box ticking exercise for you, is it?
No, definitely not. And I don't know whether people are like that or not like that, or
they're like that.
Sort of.
Oh, they are like that.
Then, but I think, generally, I would like to think that I'm, a bit of a giver, whether that's friends, family, work colleagues. And I would certainly even take on extra myself if it was to help somebody else, because I want them to have the best possible time that they can have if they're struggling. And I don't know if you remember that the meeting that you came and hosted, the Lunch and Learn, that was a part of our mental health advocate network.
Yes, that's
and I'm one of the mental health advocates. And I really, that is something that, is voluntary. It's not part of my role. And I was doing that when I was a people manager and now in HR, but really being able to connect with colleagues who may be in crisis at that time, or just need to pick up the phone or a call like this and speak to somebody, then it makes a massive difference. And just having that conversation, we're not there to give answers, we're not there to give our opinions or anything like that, but just being that ear at the end of a phone or a video call like this, I think really makes such a difference to our colleagues.
Sure, it really does. It's interesting, you kind of find that people that get into those roles, and again, this isn't a generalism, so it may not be the case for you, but people that find themselves in those roles or to be mental health first aiders, champion positive mental health, so they've had either poor experiences of mental health themselves or people close to them, so therefore it becomes a passion. Has that been the case for you, or is there was another reason for it?
Yeah, no, 100%. It has been the case for me, and it has been the case for a lot of my colleagues who are mental health advocates as well. And I think that's part of the passion and the drive to help other people, because once you've been in that position and you know that it's not a nice place to be, as you've sort of alluded to on your sort of inspirational talks as well, in that, you want to be able to support somebody else, complete strangers, some of the colleagues are, because you know it's not great. Me personally, I was kind of in denial for a long time. So I was experiencing symptoms. So nothing had happened. There was no particular trigger. I was just sort of going along. And then I would find myself taking the wrong turn when I was in the car driving. So I'd missed the turn in. So kind of distracted. I would forget words in a meeting, and then you have this internal mental panic that you're kind of like, everybody's waiting and the time seems like it's going on forever, and it's literally like nanoseconds. But that was sort of having an impact where I couldn't find the words that I wanted to use in meetings, in work. I would be quite emotional. So, whilst driving along, or once I'd finished work, then I'd be quite teary, and just sort of kept ignoring it. And it was getting worse, and I was getting heart palpitations, and I wasn't really eating, and probably drinking too much coffee, and the symptoms were getting worse and worse. So a colleague within Principality, who isn't a mental health advocate, but just an awesome human being, we had a bit of a chat, and I opened up to her, and she convinced me to contact our employee assistance program, which I did. And for anybody that's had to make that first call, I just think takes such courage, because that is really hard. It is really hard to open up and explain to somebody. And that was part of my issue, was I couldn't explain what was happening. I knew it wasn't right, and it wasn't great, but I couldn't really explain. I said there wasn't an event or a trigger that I could attribute it to. And I think maybe if that was the case, I might have been more accepting, because I could have gone, oh, it was because of that. And then, feeling how I was a result, but nothing had really happened. So it was just this thing that was creeping up on me. So as I said, I contacted EAP, and they were amazing. Definitely, I know most big companies and organizations have an employee assistance program, which I just think is a fantastic service, and they are available 24 hours a day. So, even if you're not in work hours, you can make that call when it's suitable for you. Spoke to a fantastic person who put me in contact with a local counsellor. So this was back in 2018 when you could actually go out and see people and didn't have to social distance or anything. And my counsellor was amazing in that he was calling me out on all sorts of things I didn't want to admit to, and he wasn't letting go, to be fair. So he was awesome. And he, after my first session, encouraged me to speak to my GP because he felt that having some time away from work just to try and rest and recuperate would be good. Again, I wasn't convinced because obviously I kind of knew myself and felt that it was just something that would pass. I'm just a bit tired, maybe. Went to see the GP. They signed me off immediately once I'd explained what was happening. Still not convinced. I went back to work with the GP note in my bag, and I just thought I'd see how it went. And then during the course of that day, I had a conversation with my line manager at that time. And fair play, as soon as he knew that I had a doctor's note, he, in the nicest possible way, marched me out of the office. And I just thought, I'll have 2 weeks off, a bit of a rest, and I'll be fine. And that 2 weeks turned into probably about 8 weeks, which were the toughest 8 weeks of my entire life. As you start to work through with the counsellor some of the things that I didn't even know were maybe bothering me, which were starting to bubble up and causing all of these symptoms. My GP did prescribe antidepressants, or quite low level ones, and I think that also helped in terms of stabilizing how I was feeling. And it was difficult because I was very protective. It'd taken me a long time to admit that I needed to stop and to rest and to take medication and to talk to somebody. But I was quite protective. So I have a teenage daughter now, but at the time she was a little bit younger, and I was worried because I was the only income coming in. I didn't want her to worry if she thought that I wasn't in work. So I would get dressed for work in the morning and take her to school, come home, get changed, and then, sleep most of the day or whatever was happening during those 8 weeks. And then I'd get dressed back into my work clothes and pick her up from school. So she just assumed that I was in work the whole time, because I didn't want her to have to worry about her mum or what that might mean financially or whatever. But that in itself was probably a stressor that I didn't need at that time, but something that I chose to do. But I said I managed to return back to work. Work were very supportive in terms of a phased return, and actually came back probably stronger than I ever was. So knowing that and going through that experience and listening to some of the techniques that my counsellor had shared, that drives the passion then for me in helping other people when I'm a mental health advocate, and asking hopefully the right questions and getting them to focus on themselves. And it's quite interesting that I can see parts of my behavior in the individuals that I'm working with, and they're not at the point where they're willing to accept, but you kind of know where it's going to go. But obviously everyone has to get there in their own time. It's their own journey. But yeah, because of my experience, that's what drives me to help others.
Absolutely. Wow. I tip my cap to you. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. Genuinely, I'm humbled that you shared that with us on the show today. And thank you. I think it's that lived experience which helps people to reach out and engage and stuff. And as I said to you before, is a perfect vehicle to drive engagement, because actually for your colleagues and your peers and even your family to see you reaching out to speak about stuff, it kind of gives them permission to speak about and think about their stuff. And like you said, that as we mentioned on the show many times with many different guests from this field, that acceptance is the most difficult place to reach, but everyone reaches it in their own time. And you picked up on two really important points there. You mentioned the EAP. Now, you're absolutely right. In larger organizations, the fastest route to help is actually through the organization. But I think traditionally we have a distrust, don't we, of reaching out about personal matters in a professional environment, because kind of in days gone by, we fear that being judged or blackballed, even kind of like you're going to go out the company if you start to speak about the fact that you're anxious or stressed. And how did you find that experience of reaching out? Did you have that kind of fear before you reached out and they were really good to you?
100%. So I didn't really have the fear of reaching out to EAP, but I had the fear of once it became knowledge, I guess, then I didn't want my line manager's manager to think that I couldn't cope in work, for fear that that would hinder my career going forward. Prior to that, I was, considered a highly functioning people manager, and I didn't want any of that to be impacted. So that was a huge fear, which it took me a long time, as I said, to admit that I probably needed some time away. And the issues weren't necessarily work related. They were just a combination of life over the years that, hadn't maybe dealt with, and it had all sort of come up at once. But those fears didn't come to light in a work setting. So I said, when I came back, I was probably stronger than I ever was, and achieved the highest grade and I had in work in terms of performance, and was really able to help out other teams as well. So although I had that perception wasn't reality. And certainly it's with our organization, our senior leaders are very proactive in talking about mental health. We've had senior leaders, we held a cuppa club, and senior leaders actually shared their own experiences like we are. Wow. Which in a large organization like ours, and that's we had men and women in very senior positions. So I was worried about what people would think of me. If you're on the exec team, then I imagine that fear is heightened yet again. And they were so open and so willing to share their experiences, and everybody's been super supportive. So again, I would hope that the perception of not wanting to tell people because of the ramifications didn't actually come to fruition, because as you mentioned, when you start talking about it, it allows other people to talk about it and things resonate, and you're kind of like, oh yeah, I did feel like that, or that sounds like me, or maybe I will phone EAP if I know it's confidential and nothing bad's going to happen. And
that's really important to stress, isn't it? The employee assistance program is completely anonymous. The organization will never see the names attributed to that. Also, very often the EAP will extend to family and even friends sometimes as well, to support people around you as well. So it's not just a you thing in that sense too. The very most that gets fed back are the themes that are being discussed, so they can focus the wellbeing initiatives ongoing, but never the person attributed to those things.
Yeah, no, not at all. And I said I would encourage anybody, if they needed to reach out, then, and they have that as an option, then definitely, as you said, the fastest route to getting support that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're watching this or listening to this right now and you're not part of a large organization, see, this is a shame I don't edit this thing, because when I mispronounce words, I got to keep it in. Anyway, if you're not part of a large organization, there we go. Then if you go to my website, nickelston.com, on the Need Help tab, you will find external resources to access for any challenge you're experiencing right now. So please do that.
This show is sponsored by Forging People, Transformational Speaking Coaching. Are you truly being heard in life, in business, in education, even at home? Your ability to deliver any message with clarity, power, and emotion will have an ultimately defining impact on your success as a speaker, leader, and influencer. For more information, contact team@forgingpeople.com. Are you truly being heard? It's time to find your voice.
The second element, Amy, what you mentioned was actually because of your lived experience and because you're championing positive mental health in your organization, there is a fear maybe, and this is certainly, I fall into this trap, and my counsellor has certainly mentioned this to me several times, of being a wounded healer. So how do you look after yourself to protect yourself whilst you look after other people? What's good for you? What recharges your batteries?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think having that lived experience, then I'm much more aware of when maybe I'm facing challenges or having a more difficult time. So, for example, my sleep will be disrupted straight away. I will feel more anxious about things. So I really sort of go back to what I was doing when I was signed off from work. And that's really sort of taking time for me, getting some early nights in. I like to read before I go to bed, getting out and getting some fresh air. Because I think, certainly with lockdown as well, it gets really easy to stay in all of the time. And absolutely, that's not particularly helpful. So I think the best thing for me is I can see it coming. So rather than it then becoming a big thing, I then take time for myself to recharge and take that time I need to sort of settle myself again and then come back.
Brilliant. And I know you're a modest soul, but the Wells CIPD Rising Star Award 2021, wow, big round of applause for that one. Wells is a big place. So for you to be the Rising Star 20, tell us about that. What is that, and how did you win it, and what does that mean to you?
It came about, so I didn't know initially. My current line manager in HR had put the nomination forward, and then she just gave me the heads up because she was like, "Oh, they might contact you to talk about it," and I was like, "Oh, what?" I'm really not into things like that at all. Pretty cringy. So anyway, I then had to do. And then another nightmare. I had to do a presentation to the CIPD. So that's the Chartered Institute for Professional Development. So that's all HR people, learning and development, and all of those great people. So I had to do a presentation to those guys about my journey within HR, because, as I said, I moved from being a people manager into HR. So they wanted me to talk about that. So that was a presentation, which again is one of the things that I particularly don't like doing, and puts me out of my comfort zone. And it was really tough as well. So I had my presentation and I thought it was okay. But the judges, they kept asking questions. And I had this niggling sort of voice in the back of my head that I was in this newcomer of the year category, but I was probably the oldest one in it. So that was kind of in the back of my mind, in that we'll do this, but they're going to pick somebody that's young and up and coming and doing an equally fantastic job. And so we did the presentation, and that was that. And then they held a virtual awards ceremony. And I think it was about 3/4 of the way through. They got to that category and they announced the winner, and it was me. And I was completely dumbfounded because I had no idea why it would be me, because I'd just been doing my job. I was new into HR. I loved everything that I was doing. Everything was new and putting me out my comfort zone. And I just, give it 110%. And that was, I was more than happy with that, because that's been a lifelong goal for me for probably over the last 10 years. I've wanted to make this move. So the fact that I was just doing what I wanted to do was more than enough. So getting the award was absolutely, it just blew me away, because I wasn't expecting that, as I said, being the oldest one there. But yeah, I was absolutely thrilled, and it's just behind me. It's super heavy. I'm just blown away.
Fantastic news. Must have been a very young room, though, to be fair. I think that kind of recognition is that, and I know that, like you said, you don't need that, but I think it's so deserved when when people don't appreciate or don't even understand the value that they bring to the organization. And I can tell from speaking to other people now from within the organization how well you're thought of and what a great job do you do. So yeah, absolutely well done. And the one question I want to ask you around that kind of role change, the people manager to HR. Now, actually, quite a lot of my audience are from your kind of part of work. However, for those that aren't, they may lump the two together. What's the difference between a people manager and an HR person or an HR leader?
Yeah, so people manager, then I was basically a line manager of various different teams over the years within various different organizations. So that would be managing a team that's doing the doing. So I've been a complaints manager, so dealing with all of complaints for the society. I've been the sort of collections manager, so when customers find themselves in arrears, the sort of the process that they need to go through for that. So it was quite a change moving from one being in a team and a leader of a team, and obviously, you know, part of that team, into I do work in a team, but each of our roles are more individual. So that was weird. That was kind of like, you know, when someone leaves a band and then they go off on their own, and then you're kind of like, this is a little bit lonely.
You were the fifth Beatle.
So that was yeah. So that was a big change. But the reason why I wanted to was, over the years as a manager of teams of people, the bits that I enjoyed the most were probably the bits where you get into employee relations. So things are maybe not going so well. So things like, absence management, performance management, if somebody's been involved in a disciplinary. And what I really wanted to do is to be in a position where I could make sure that it was equal and fair for both the individual and the business, and that the right thing was being done. So, you know, in my past, that I'd seen like decisions that probably weren't the right decisions or weren't fair, and I was really keen to make sure that I was in a space where I could ensure that it was right and fair for both, I said, the organization and the individual. And you get to do all of the fun stuff as well around, you know, sort of succession planning and talent management, and, you know, helping people develop and follow the goals and the dreams that they want to. So I started, you know, sort of got into HR, which was a goal of mine for the last 10 years. And I'm really keen to help other people do that. And again, I'm in a position now where I can help more people rather than just working with one particular team. Then hopefully my reach is a lot further now.
Absolutely. Well done. Very purpose-led. I like that progression. It's really cool. Does some of your work involve the contact center kind of arena as well?
Yeah, so we do have a contact center. I actually started, my very first job was in a contact center, not in my current organization, but in another organization. And that's kind of how it started. So I was in a contact center in a financial services institution. And I was kind of looking at my line manager thinking, oh, I could do a much better job than that. So that was my goal. I love that spirit. It's really cool. to become a line manager, which I did achieve, and I'd set myself a goal. I wanted to do it before I was 21, and my line manager was telling me that 21-year-olds don't make good managers. So that just drove me even further to make sure that happened, which it did. And then I said, I've managed teams of people over the years, but yeah, really helping people to develop and grow. I think, as we know, as part of well-being, it's not just about the financial, it's about, the contribution that you make. It's about feeling that you add value. It's about helping others. So, it's not necessarily about the financials. In order to have well-being, you need lots of different things going on. And if I can contribute to a bit of that, I can't necessarily pay people more money, but if I can contribute to their development and their overall well-being, then that's good for me.
Yeah. Again, it's very purpose-led for you, knowing you as I do. And I actually think a financial reward is actually quite way down the pecking order, actually, when it comes to how people feel appreciated, doesn't it? It's always good. I've had money. I've not had money. I know which I'd prefer, but it's not everything. Absolutely. I mentioned the contact center element because I do a lot of work in that space directly, and it's quite a brutal environment, isn't it, from a mental health perspective? I think especially if you're dealing with things like complaints continuously, or in a position of constant rejection, or even abuse sometimes, that's certainly a big factor, isn't it, in that space?
Yeah, 100%. And I said, I've worked with contact center teams over the years. I also said work with our collections team. And that was when I joined that team, that was one of the things that I was concerned with, is that they take calls from customers who are in financial difficulty. That's all of their calls. So they don't get a nice call in between. They just have these customers who are in financial difficulty. And because of the pressure that they're under, may behave in a certain way. And my concern was, how do I keep the team well and keep the team resilient? So when I spoke to my L&D team at the time, it was quite a few years ago now, we did a whole session. We had a resilience course, and we took the whole team on that course. And it was really good because it gave the team an opportunity to connect. It sort of showed them what it's like when you're just sort of in survival mode, when you're thriving, and we covered off all of those areas. And they are a team that are very good about talking to one another if they've had a difficult call, and how they feel about that, and hats off to them, because they keep going in, and especially since we had COVID, people's finances have been, massively impacted. So the sort of number of customers impacted has increased as well. But yeah, having that resilience training, I think, has been a massive win for that team. It's a bit like counsellors. I know counsellors, once they check in with their supervisor and they download as well, because when you sit there and you hear people telling you things that are not necessarily nice, that can take its toll on you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You're quite right. And I think it's healthy to have that safe space to go and talk as well. And if it becomes like an exercise skill, doesn't it? That you kind of, the more you get comfortable with being just a little bit more vulnerable, the easier it becomes. And you kind of set out on this mission to get to know yourself again. As you alluded to earlier on, it's so easy to kind of either mask or cover over experiences that just raise their head right now. And it's important to talk about these things, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. And, one of the things that I know the Mental Health Advocate Network in my organisation is trying to do is really break through the stigma of people not talking about mental health. And, we're finding the more and more, and we've had senior leaders get involved as well, which has been fantastic. The more and more you talk about it, the more it's normalised and the taboo is taken away. And then people are more likely to open up. Sort of regardless of where they sit in the organisation, what their role is, what their gender is, then we really are trying to sort of bust through that stigma associated with it, and talking about it is one of the best ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really cool. And I think what I like is that you kind of that thing that I preach about, but is, even if in a professional environment, is you as a human, it's the same you that shows up in the workplace and the one at home, and there's no disconnect. As an aside, have you been watching Severance on Apple TV?
I haven't, no.
Watch it. It's an amazing concept. So it's kind of where people go to work and they can't remember their personal lives when they go to work. So she get like a chip implanted. And then when they leave work, they can't remember what they did in work. So there's two different people. And it's about how that breaks down. Really, really, really cool. So if you get a chance to watch it, you can binge watch it on a free subscription probably. So go anyway, I digress.
Great tip.
Tip of the day. So away from work, Amy, what do you love to do? What are you really passionate about? Hobbies? Obviously, you have a daughter as well. So what do you guys enjoy doing together?
So she very much enjoys theme parks, which I very much don't. However, as it's the two of us, you kind of have to go with it. And I can't even say grin and bear it, because I'm certainly not grinning. But we tend to do that. We like to go out to eat. I like cooking, pottering about in the garden, sort of those sorts of things, being outdoors. Love getting down to the beach and bodyboarding together. That's a really great day for us to recharge, is get out on the beach, get the bodyboards in the water, and just sort of spend all day sort of hopefully in the sunshine. But yeah, anything water related is good in our house for sure.
The home is South Wales?
It is. So yeah, we're based in Newport. So Principality head office is in Cardiff, so not too far away. But we have been working remotely since March 2020. So it's been a while.
It's been a while. I know Newport very well. I do a lot of work in South Wales actually, but there's also some nice beaches along the coastline as well.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's quite a handy little spot because you can sort of, Bristol is half an hour away, Cardiff's half an hour away, then kind of in a nice little spot there.
Yeah, absolutely. Just over the bridge, which is now free. So even better.
I know. Yeah.
So the question I like to ask everybody on this show is, I'm going to set the scene. I am now the MC of the O2 Arena in London. 20,000. Actually, let's change this. I'm now the MC of the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff. 20,000 people have paid their hard-earned money to come and hear you do your thing, whatever your thing is. You're kicking back in the green room with your feet on a table, sipping a glass of Prosecco, or whatever your tipple is. And I'm just about to announce you to the stage, and your walk-on music just kicks in. It really booms on. That song that motivates you, that lifts you, that gets you at peak state. Amy Maidment, what would your walk-on music be and why?
Okay, so we're at Principality Stadium, and it's going to be.
I like.
I think it would be Katy Perry's Dark Horse, because I love the beat to that, and I think that it sort of sums me up a little bit. I think I can be underestimated at times, so that's the one for me, Dark Horse.
That's that, and the first time that's ever been suggested as a walk-on track, so I'll be listening to that as soon as I hit stop on the recording shortly. Amy, what an amazing guest. Thank you so much for sharing everything, and a big round of applause for Amy, of course.
Thank you, Nick. It's been a pleasure.
Really cheered me up on a Monday mornings. I've recorded this. I'm so pleased we did this. And I'd love to get you back on a future episode as well. Keep on keeping on. You're doing amazing stuff, amazing work. Love watching your progress and all the stuff that you're passionate about as well. And of course, hopefully we'll actually see each other very soon as well. But in the meantime, big virtual hug. Yeah. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Amy Maidment, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks so much, Nick.
No worries. And for everybody else, please stay tuned for next week's episode. I have another amazing guest to bring you, assuming the voice holds out. Let's say it will. So stay tuned, hit subscribe and like and all that kind of stuff. And in the meantime, take care, be well, and stay happy. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Do hit the like button and subscribe to stay tuned for future episodes. Published every Monday and available through YouTube or the podcast platform of your choice. See you next week.